Let's go. Let's
Let's
get them.
let's do it. Hey, it's so good to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Absolutely, brother. It's a complete joy. How's my audio, Joe?
Yeah, you sound great.
Good?
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
yeah, everything's
Good.
good. So, being in music, being a busy man, I'm curious, 5 years ago, this pandemic totally threw things into the unknown. So many things changed. How did you survive the pandemic of 2020, and how has that radiated into your world in 2025?
Interestingly enough, I was able to survive on investments, heavy investments. I didn't really have anything to sell per se. I wasn't doing any streaming, music, film, or any creative stuff. I was deeply hit by it. I was wondering, is it um scientific? Is it, like everybody else, is it real? Is it not real? Is it God? So I was kind of doing a soul search during that time, and I was able to thrive off of investments, and I had a few consulting clients.
So let's get into the heart and soul of what you do for a living right now in 2025. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds. Kids are the truth serum, and it's career day, and the kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" What's your answer?
Absolutely. Well, I am an entrepreneur. I'm a musician. I'm one of the founders of pioneers of hip hop from the borough of Queens. I was one of the first rappers by the name of Mr. Sweetie G. From there, I went on to become an entrepreneur in the world of business, and I was in management as well, and production. Obviously, I was on LL Cool J's management team. We did the album Mr. Smith.
Oh
We
yeah.
did the show with Quincy Jones called In the House, Charles Fisher, Brian Latour, and other great people in the office that helped that. I discovered the rapper David Banner, the rapper Positive K. I discovered Saigon, and I've worked with obviously numerous actors and entertainers as well. I was in the sports business, and I had a agency with Alonzo Shavers called the Terra Firma Sports Agency. We sold that. We did a 300 million in business. Did an exit on that. I'm back in the space now with Raheem Vick and Brady Jackson now. We're doing NIL and representing athletes. So it's been a full circle. And still back to the music. Joe, I just dropped my EP for the first time in 20 something years at the place to be, Mr. Sweetie G. So I had to go back and do the music. The music's here for us.
Absolutely. So, what did you want to be at 12 years old? Was this your dream life?
At 12 years old, I experienced youth homelessness from 8 years old to the seventh grade. Fortunately, my brother and my mother, none of us were victims to any violence. Nothing happened to us. So I was always a dreamer, a voracious reader. Grew up in a household in Brooklyn, Sterling Place, Crown Heights, where we had nothing but love and the best of a life. We thought we were rich because we didn't want for anything. And then the journey between 8 years old to seventh grade, I was a dreamer. I was able to craft words and tell stories and kind of intermodulate later on in life and express love and warmth and different kind of colors and vibes through lyrics and rapping and music. So I think it's my calling, and I still end up in this space.
Having a jazz radio show, my gateway drug, so to speak, was Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, like it was for a lot of people. What was that album? What was that artist? What was the moment where the light bulb went on and you were like, I'm there?
Well, early in life, the Ohio players, the funk, the orchestration, the live instruments, the pure soul pouring out. Obviously, Earth, Wind, and Fire was magic. And of course Michael Jackson, that led on to Michael Jackson. On the soul side, uh, Whispers. I was always a vocal guy, and on the rock side, Van Halen. You can replace anybody you want to, but that original vocalist is it. Then I'd go anywhere from Gang of Four, because growing up in New York, we didn't segment music. So to us, Billy Joel and Stevie Wonder, Luther Vandross, we put them all together.
Yeah.
Traditionally in this country, music was called race music, then it went to black music, then rhythm and blues, or actually rhythm and blues. And so I never had segmentation. I always believed that music was a gift. The gift of song could never do you wrong, which is what I talk about on my radio show on Saturday nights at 8 o'clock on the Global Dance Party, Freshest FM.
And this leads me to what we were talking about before we got on the air here. I had mentioned being in jazz and how there's a lot of jazz musicians that don't have the gold records like other genres. How did you it's very clear from the way you roll in this very limited time that we've talked that you get it. You get music. You get there's business, but you also get that there's soul and there's genres should be kind of should we shouldn't be factioned out. We should appreciate good music for good music. How did you acquire that philosophy?
Well, I had an appreciation for music at the core, and I'm a spiritual man. So again, whether it is if someone is praying the Adhan in Arabic in the Muslim relationship, that calling of the Adhan is so spirited. If you have a cantor that's in a Jewish religion and he's making a calling, the Baptist church, wow, what a sound, what a history. All of these to me were pulling from God's well.
Yeah,
Those keys weren't really white or black, they were gray.
yeah.
And what made the color is the heart. That's what music is.
Wow. That's amazing. So let me ask you this. What was the first live show that you saw that blew you away?
I would have to say, in my times, none of it blew me away because in Brooklyn at that time, there were festivals and there was always music around. I think what really touched me was the recording, the technical aspect of it, looking at the album covers, studying, reading, the magazines. What we have back then, we had Keyboard Magazine, we had what Beat, Jazz Beat, all these magazines, learning these people, the mystification of Miles Davis, who was so strong about his craft and such an innovator, right? From the electronic, the merging of the electronic piece, him dealing with his illnesses, turning his back to the audience and making political and socioeconomic and statements that were just amazing that like nothing else. Chick Corea, who brought music, was that pop? Was that jazz? And then what about the Kurzweil and the emergence of the electronic sound all the way through Herbie Hancock, which led to where we are in hip hop.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the live performance for me. I was studying it. I was reading those liner notes. I was watching and learning arrangements and studying deeply offline from the music. So I let my heart, the heart for the music, catch my mind, which made really soul. That's soul. When the heart and the mind are together, you're not just a listener, you're a practitioner.
You know, I watched the documentaries on Clive Davis and even Quincy Jones, and it's amazing how they developed this acumen for sniffing out talent, producing. They did all of this. They had this breadth. How did you acquire this? When did you know you had this talent for discovering talent and for honoring the music?
Well, when I was doing the rap as Mr. Sweetie G, I was one of the first singing MCs. And I had the honor of having everybody from Mike Murphy from the System to Omar Hakim, Bernard Wright. I mean, so many Queens musicians. I mean, there's a list of them. Okay. So, and obviously, the emergence of the county of Queens is obviously Brooklyn. People were making more money. People worked in the civil, whether it was police officers, transit, sanitation, educators. And Queens became, this is the way you go. This is when the money starts to build up. Some people from the Bronx, Harlem coming through. So it was just an amazing space. Look how many great rappers come from Queens.
Yeah.
If you look at it, LL Cool J, if you take Run DMC, 50 Cent, Nicki Minaj, Hit and Play, you just this and the producers, Marley Marl, you had Roxanne Shante, it just goes on. This is all just Queens,
Yeah.
and including Positive K, myself, and others. So many Queens artists, and there was specifically Queens was really it birthed a lot of great jazz musicians.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about the bass players that come out of there. Let's talk about the drummers. I mean, such a rich, rich, rich palette of amazing musicians. So for me, I would just hear where the music was, try to study, learning where were the good studios. I would compare what Sigma Sound studio to like maybe a New York studio, just imagine it in my mind. So I've always been a traditionalist and had a pure love for the art form, from acoustic. And then I had no limits. I mean, I would listen to Pavarotti intuitively, And listen, James Brown, Pavarotti, line them up. It's all the same for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My dad was from Brooklyn. He looked like Luca Brasi from The Godfather, but he had a real soft center. And whenever things got real rough, Pavarotti, when I walked in and I heard Pavarotti, I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew it was getting to that deep point. But it was
Yeah.
Sinatra, it was that whole thing. But yeah, it's like yeah, recognizing the breadth of how that rolls. So let me ask you this. Who has been that inspirational force for you to evolve and to be inspired and to become who you are in your life?
I'd say biblical characters, people from and we could identify them from the Torah. It could be the Bible. It could be the Quran. It could just be just little motivating statements from heroes that we've had, from Dr. Martin Luther King to John F. Kennedy to Mahatma Gandhi, and just sourcing back, wisdom as its own, be it Jacob, Abraham, the kings. I mean, just studying the root of the spirit. An aligned spirit makes a better musician. Music comes from the soul, not the ear, and not really the heart. It resonates, it's birthed from the soul. It is cooked and cleaned from the heart, and it is fed through the ear.
Wow. You just reminded me of a South African pianist composer. His name is Nduzo Nakatini, I believe. He's amazing, and when he speaks and his spirituality, it flows through his music. He came through Kansas City, and we have a premier place on 18 and Vine called the Blue Room. Every time he comes in, it's just it takes you to another level. Even talking to like the elders, like Dr. Randy Weston and Sonny Rollins and all those cats. They
Ooh.
dude, they hum at a level that isn't even something you can put words to. And that's what the music. How do you believe, like even with Quincy, that they get to that point where they hum so loudly?
Well, I think there's continuity. It's like music's DNA. Look at what the Stones do. They would reach deep into the deep Mississippi, into the Delta, and carry it through. They were able to put their own edge to it. One of my favorite lyricists and melody makers is Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney speaks in a different tone. It's a different breath. It's a different key. And it resonates as purely as a poet. It resonates as purely as Nas or Jay-Z. I mean, to give an example, listen to me, Joe. Let me kind of take it slow. We don't care whether it's jazz. We know what it is. Matter of fact, people are always talking about music in the biz. It's not the business of music. It's exactly how you use it. A lot of people would confuse it, but I'd always bring it back. A matter of fact, in music, there's never the spirit of lack. You can always attack or you can just lean back. But if the music is good, it'll hook you like, you know that word. I won't say it because we're on YouTube. And if I did that, they'd probably break down the money and that would be rude. I'm just that dude.
I love it. I love it. Let me ask you this. How have you balanced the one thing about getting into the arts is that to me, as I get to be an older guy, there's something huge about staying in the game and evolving and getting to a point where you're finding not only your personal threshold, but you're honoring the music. What has gotten you up every day to allow you to have this level of success and to have your soul feel fulfilled?
Yeah, I think I'm a musician and it never stops. I mean, drums to me are God walking. That's his feet. Strings are him breathing.
Yeah.
The bass line is the heart. The lyrics are his word. The sound that we hear is the magic of the music. What we're hearing is nothing but God, and it comes in different forms. And the more music and the categories and genres you go into, the more spiritual you are, the more godly you are. And people that are limited in their scope of music, I'm not judging one against the other. They're just hearing the wind one way. I hear the wind many different ways.
Yeah.
The strings move. The bass line. What about measures and when we're hitting a third or a fifth or we're augmenting or diminished sevenths and nines, And listen, the music's never too far away, Joe.
Yeah. That's it.
It's never too far away. You
Yeah.
know, it's
Absolutely.
always here. So for me, I think I'd die if I didn't have music. And I've been able to build fortunes, make fortunes, and represent the the greatest artists and people in sports and film, but it's always my spiritual connection by the DNA of the world. Um, the DNA of the world is music. It is a direct chain. Cinema. I'm having the honor now of executive producing this film. It's called The Courage to Thrive. It's about the first African American Navy pilot. And she was a helicopter pilot. Her name is Kameen Samuel. And in this film, she goes and she talks about how women who have had challenges have overcome those challenges. And she reaches out to different people in different segments and different times. And the reason I say that is just as film and the visual is such an important, expressive communicator and a medium to transfer. Music is the silent one. You need the eyes to watch film. You don't even need the ears. You can feel the music.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you put them together like a great soundtrack with a film, it is the greatest story ever told.
Yeah. The one thing about good art is that it requires risk. When you look at the arc of your career, what's the biggest risk that you've had to take?
Wow, it's funny you said the biggest risk is the day when I was in Queens and I was winning a lot of battles and I went up to Harlem and Grandmaster Flash would be playing the Easy Mo B. I'm sorry, Cool Mo D and the Treacherous Three, Kaz, Curtis Blow, all these rappers, and me as a Queens guy picking up that mic and having the guts to attempt to go up against the greatest rappers that ever lived was a defining moment for me. And I won. I was number one for a few months and maybe for a few years. I think the second piece is when I went from hip hop and started doing the house music. I'm one of the founders of New York City Garage House. And having to play alongside a metronome was different than just having the loop beat. And then as a vocalist, I'm the lead singer for Cultural Violet was on Easy Street and New Civilization, another one of the house dance art bands that I did with some great musicians, Winston Jones, the DJ, Victor Simonelli. I was able to start working with these musicians, sometimes people so much greater than me, and sometimes just collaborators. Some were DJs, some were engineers. That's what the music business piece did for me. So I just think it's been a part of me breathing and living. I can always touch, like I can hit a button and play a song that just moves the soul at any minute.
So let me ask you this. When you go into the creative arts, you have this dream of what your career and what things can be like. And then there's the reality. What's been the most surprising thing in between the dream and the reality?
Wow. The most surprising thing between the dream and the reality, most people think it's money. When you take creativity and put it with currency, or when you put money with culture, as long as you can control it, as long as you train it well, that could mean how you're conveying your art or your message to the audience. The greater musicians, the jazz players, they'd sit back and say, "Yeah, baby, when I was playing this song, I was going down, man. I was in Mississippi, and man, these damn police came up on me, man. They said, 'Boy, get out that car.'" And this is called "Boy, Get Out That Car." Boy, get out that car. Do-do-do-do. We're going too far. Do-do-do-do. Coming back to life. Look, I just did it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That continuity, not just escapism, not just performing to make people dance, but it is a call from the ancestors. People cried before we died.
Yeah.
And some people cried as they came into the world because babies, I believe, they hear and see everything God has to say, and they see the world, and the baby's crying on the way in, saying, "What am I doing?" And many of us cry on the way out, but it's a silenced cry,
Yeah.
even in pain. And music, I think, is the evidence of that. You can't see God's face, but you can hear his voice through music.
The one thing that as we've said over and over is that music is this majestic force that moves us. What was one of the most magical live shows that you've ever seen?
There's two. I think one was Earth, Wind, and Fire. Watching them play orchestrated was amazing. I think Luther Vandross was insane. Like he was literally hitting those notes, the presentation, the performance. And I would have to say James Brown I saw. And it was so raw. I think I saw him in his late 60s, man, doing splits and things like this.
There's a place in Kansas
Yeah.
City called the River Market, and he came through and sold out, but it was like an open air market kind of a thing. And I remember getting a coffee at a cafe and hearing James Brown echo over downtown Kansas City was one of the coolest things I'd ever heard in my life. It was magical. So the interesting thing I believe about Earth, Wind and Fire in '07, Van Halen got back together on that brief tour and they came through Kansas City and they opened up for him. And I dug through the history of Van Halen. I think I read a biography. That was the first show I think that Eddie took David to and it hooked them. Isn't that wild? That was the
Yeah,
moment.
it is. When it was replaced, I never I could never get by it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And I would watch. I know why he got dropped from the band. He was so in your face, like a 50 Cent of his time,
Hmm.
not as verbal. And wow. And then Eddie on guitar. And then you look at the iterations of rock musicians. My segmentation sometimes is in category, but not in genre or separatism. It's actually unified. If I look at some of the things that Kravitz does, I've looked at some of the things um, that Slash has done, and some of the old from Lead Belly to, I mean, just looking at how guitarists approach their space. Um, if you look at the hillbilly music, that how they would riff and roll and express themselves. It's just amazing. Music is amazing. Music is the continuity of humanity.
Absolutely. So, of all of these things that you've accomplished, and more importantly, as a human being evolved to at this point, what are you the proudest of?
My philanthropy, the Book Bank Foundation, which is a not-for-profit, you know, we've been serving the lost, the lonely, and the forgotten for about 28, going on 29 years. And we support critical thinking, reading. We have a program called Groceries to Grow, where we help families with in the food desert, and they have a certain period of time to get it together. We have a flight school led by Captain John Addison, where we have young kids from the age of 12 to about 17 flying planes and learning about the space of aviation, one block at a time, where we go into the inner city and we provide um, cleaning and of this, picking up the dirt and picking up mess and inspiring people to keep the community clean. And then lastly, the one dear to my heart, which is Shelter from the Streets, where we go to the homeless population in New York, under the bridges, in the tunnels, in the streets, shelters, and bring brand new clothes and support and items resources that they need.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. You have all these bubbles, family, friends, colleagues, fans, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am a man of God that has a message, and I use different art forms. I use luxury, wealth, money, art, um, tragedy, love, pain, hate. The whole world to me is a canvas. And every day since I was a child, when I wake up and look up, I look at it, it's like painting that ceiling, Sistine Chapel, with my vision, my work, my gifts. What do I put on it? What do I take away?
The one thing about the life you live, being around people that we call celebrities, is that we all get bespeckled by that. But at the end of the day, you're a human being moving through this life and you run into a lot of people. Throughout your career, who was that one person you always loved to run into? That you were like, man, I can't, I love running into them. I love talking to them. Who was that person?
In life as a whole, or in the music entertainment space?
Probably both.
Yeah, I would say family members. My grandmother, Elizabeth Smith, God bless her, auntie and uncle, um, and always my mother and my daughter Alexa. Whenever I see her, it's amazing. But I'd say on the art level, people talk about Frank Sinatra, but Tony Bennett. I got to sit inside the room with Tony Bennett singing with no microphone in a lounge in
Yeah.
New York City, and it blew my hat off.
Wow.
So, and I would go up there. I saw him play maybe two, three times. His son, Dave Bennett, has a studio in New Jersey, and he did a lot of hip hop records, a lot. At one time, he probably did about 30% of what had come out of New York. And I would say, hey, did I call him Tony? I'd say, Mr. Bennett. He'd say, call me Tony. And I forget where these clubs would be. They would be like jazz clubs or supper clubs, throwback, but this was in the 90s. And I would just say, your voice is amazing. And this man was in his 80s and he would fill the room the same way he did. Like a lot of people talked about Frank Sinatra, but and I like Frank because of that New York edge, but Tony Bennett was a rare find.
Yeah, I've heard that before. So if anyone wants to watch the new film, the new album, any of the wonderful work you've done in your career, your philanthropy, anything, where do they find out? Where do they go?
Go to Dr. Glenn, GLENN, TOBY.com, Dr. Glenn Toby, or Glenn Toby with two N's, GLENNTOBY on all things social. And last, Joe, I am asking all creatives, people that are in pain and that are suffering, people who have overcome their pain, to please check out my TED Talk on YouTube. It's on my channel, or you can just Google it. Go to TED. Go to Ted's YouTube channel, put my name in, and there's a great message on healing. There's a great message on humanity, and it's about the difference between sight and prism. And what that is how we view our lives and how we're seen is sight. How we imbue and are imbued and how we're viewed and how we transfer is through prism. And prism is many different colors, many different experiences, many different people. It's a vibe, it's a spirit, it's a life. And that's what we should be seen as a prism and not through the eyes.
I love it. What a wonderful, insightful, revelatory interview. I'm going to put all these links in the show notes. It's been an honor to meet you, man. Thank you so much for your
Same,
service.
brother. Keep doing it. And don't forget, Joe, when you're not doing radio, check me out
Yeah.
on Freshest FM Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find it, just Google it. And of course, it's called the Global Dance Party, where I DJ live and talk and stuff like that. And good to meet you, brother. And it's great to find people who have a pure love for the craft of music.
Absolutely.
Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code Joe Dimino 10 at www.agencyyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.